First of all, I would like to wish Happy Women's Day for all the ladies present in the session, no? Um, Including the presenters Shubha and Sunita.
Thank you.
Thank you, Juice.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jose.
Thank you, Josh.
I wish people have said thank you for that instead wishing me back. Thank you so much. I would like to hear from everyone, but I don't think everyone's sounding will not be good in the session. Thank you so much on that. And so Subha and Sunita are not new to Code Mantra. They have done multiple webinars on excellent topics like modeling, equity, and other stuffs. They both are good mentors, coach, and their inspiring talks with which they share good thoughts, experiences in transforming lives in many corporates and other areas where they go. With that, today's webinar will be on the topic Break the Bias. I would like to hand over the session to Subha so that she could take over. No? Over to you, Subha.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you,
Yep.
everyone, for taking time to join in. Um, it's always a pleasure to come back to Code Mantra. It feels like a family now. We've been so many times in Code Mantra by now. So it's always a pleasure. And I know this is after lunch hour and everybody had your heavy meals. So I'll try to keep it as light as possible. And the topic that we're going to talk about is very heavy on all of us. You know, bias is something that is being spoken about all over the world. And what more could be an apt moment to talk about it, because today's Women's Day celebration, and the theme of this Women's Day is Break the Bias. So today's session, we are going to be focusing not on one of the bias or a couple of biases, but then more practical takeaways in terms of how we as an individual can identify our own inherent biases and how do we tackle it in the workplace. So that's where our focus is going to be. So yes, it's a Women's Day session, but my conversation with you guys is not going to be focused more on women. This is going to be very, very gender neutral. So feel free to ask the question. If you can keep your cameras on, that'll be lovely. So as a presenter, I don't feel like I'm talking to some black hole. Would be lovely to see few of the Code Mantra members. So keep your videos on. Keep yourself on mute so we don't disturb others. Hopefully, if I'm audible to each and every one of you. If in case you're not able to hear me, please feel free to just leave a message in the chat box. I'll be watching the chat box very closely. I'll interact with you. For those of you who cannot be on the camera, just somebody is not on mute. Can you, if you have the host access, you should be able to kind of mute them.
Yeah, please go ahead. No?
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. For those of you who cannot be on the video, it's okay. Relax. Lie down on your recliner, pick up a coffee in your hand, but keep your fingers busy so I understand that you're there. To start the session, I would encourage each and every one of you to kind of interact with me. If any one of the words resonate with you, whatever I'm talking about, please leave a message so we could pick it up at the end of the session. Even if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a message in the chat box. Please use the chat box abundantly, and that will help me to understand and read your mind a little bit sitting in one corner of Chennai. All right. So with that note, I want to...
Sorry to interrupt, Subha. Actually, the chat is disabled.
Is it? Okay.
Ganapati, can you just look into it?
Just check.
Just a minute, Ritika.
I can see it. I can see it. I am able to chat. Just check. Are you receiving my messages, Ritika?
Yeah, I did. I'm receiving the message. I mean, the last message I can see is from Bharti V. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's
now
working
I
fine.
Yeah,
it's fine. Okay, you can just say
now I can
test.
do it.
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
All right. To start a conversation, so there are like close to 100+ people in the session. So let's kickstart with something, you know, fun and things like that. So, how about I hear from you? How are you feeling today? Just give me a hashtag. Just give me a hashtag of how are you feeling today? Lazy, chirpy, good, okay, sad, whatever you're feeling, just put a hashtag before that and then just send me a message on chat box, please. Awesome. Yeah, I like that. Excited as always. Okay, this is one reason I love to come back to Code Mantra. You guys are so very active. Happy, cool, energetic, good. What more a trainer needs than a bunch of excited people. Thank you so much. All right, getting on to the topic. I know Joe's introduced me a little bit. Let me introduce myself. Me and my partner in crime, who's also joined the call, Sunita Vikram, both of us run an organization called AGWA, and we are global diversity, equity, and inclusion strategists. So what it means is we do provide to organization end-to-end support of building diversity culture and making the workplace as inclusive as possible. Our work is not limited to just the corporate world. We do the same inclusive strategy in terms of communities, colleges, schools, and even at home. How do you be inclusive at home? So these are 5 areas that we cover. Apart from that, I have 25 years of experience in the corporate world. Yes, I've been there, done that. I'm a Six Sigma Master Black Belt. I don't know how many of you resonate with that. So I'm a pure analytical process person. I've soaked myself in designing processes, strategies, policies for companies all over the world. What it means is I save a lot of money for the organization. So I've been the most wanted candidate in the market. I'm also a social entrepreneur and a thought influencer in the field of diversity, equity, inclusion. I also have my master's in journalism and mass communication. So now getting back to the topic of breaking bias. So we're going to be looking at more in terms of how do you tackle bias at workplace? We are all human beings. All of us have brain, right? So if you have a brain, you have a bias. There's nothing to feel good about it or bad about it. Bias is an inherent feature of the brain. And we're going to talk about why we're thinking what we're thinking and why we behave a certain manner, right? Before we do that, have you heard of the word bias? I'm sure every one of us have heard. What is one bias that you've heard in the workplace? Or what is that one bias that you've faced in the workplace or in the community? Somebody else is still not on mute. If you can help me just check on that in between.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So what is that one bias that you know? Give me in the chat box. Bias, gender bias, yes, gender inequality. Hamza, thank you so much. Lakshmi, thank you so much for like being the first torchbearer for the messages. Come on, guys, others, 100 plus people in the call. You guys can definitely do fantastic. Gender, society, gender bias, yes. What more? What more, guys? Come on. I want to hear more of those words. Benefits to friends, yes. Yeah. What else? Racism. Okay. Bias towards a particular race. Yes, these are biases. Anything else that you've heard about? Language bias. Yes. Language bias, accent bias, beauty bias. Yeah, we are more favorable to people who are more beautiful. All of those biases are there. There are close to 154 biases they have identified. Out of that, maybe 15 or 20 biases kind of impact the workplace predominantly. And we're going to talk a little bit about those biases as well. But before we move on, let's do a quiz time. I want to show you 4 pictures. And I want you to choose one of the picture instinctively, because the reason is this is an experimentation for you to understand your own brain. This is not for me as a facilitator to judge you saying that, oh, you chose that. It is about you to understand your own inherent biases. So this is a quiz and it's going to come back. All you need to do is pick up one answer and give it to me in the chat box. All right, are we ready for the quiz? All right. Out of these 4 people, who do you think is always late to work? Just look at the pictures and then say, who could be that latecomer? Who could be that person in your office that you resonate with? Someone who looks like that in office? Okay, Lakshmi says 1. Come on, guys. I need 125 answers. I'm not getting away before that. One seems to be popular. Okay. All right. One is okay. Two, two, three. Okay. Okay. Come on, others. Others. Yes. Four. Geeta says four. Three. One. Rupesh says three. Okay. Okay. That's interesting, right? How our brain works. Okay, there is not much of information I've given you. We're just looking at the picture and we are making some assumptions. Who could be late out of these four people? Okay, that guy looks like my colleague who is always late to work. Okay, let me choose that guy. But let me tell you one thing, guys. One has been a popular face among all our facilitations. So how do you kind of decide that one? You look at uh, you just have a picture in front of you. I've not given you any information about them. You don't even know their name. You don't even know their background. You don't know their age, their hierarchy, nothing. But then we're just looking at their face, their hairstyle, their face, what they're dressed up in. Are they smiling, not smiling? Are they busy looking? There are a lot of things that we gather out of the picture. So this is how the unconscious brain also works. The unconscious mind also works this in few seconds in interviews, when you're talking to a stranger, when you're meeting someone for the first time at office, you try to guess them in just within 10 to 15 seconds. You try to be like, oh, this person seems to be a nice person, or this person seems to be a terrible person. That decision is just made in a split second. Think of this one, right? You're going in a bus, you just got into the bus is crowded, you have seats available in four places, and you look at around, and who do you sit next to? Right? That's a big question that you ask. And unconsciously, you just go and make yourself comfortable with someone who you connect with in some way or the other. So so this particular theory of why we kind of look at the picture and make that decision is based on a theory called Iceberg Principle. All right. So Iceberg Principle is we just look at some of the basic details of the person, how they are dressed up, their food, how are they talking, how is their accent, do they know to dance, do they like music? These are something that we quickly understand about human beings, but we don't know anything about their upbringing, what kind of a parental structure they have, which country they come from, or which part of India are they from, what kind of values that they have, what is their religious belief, what is their political belief, what is their marital status, how do they treat the elders, and a lot of things makes us as human beings. So that's called our deep culture, which is hidden inside our brain. What we see is like an iceberg, only 10% is visible, and we make that assumptions very quickly. All right, so this is one of the reasons. Iceberg is a theory which says that human beings are biased because we tend to look at only 10% of another human being, right? It also based on your 90% of the experiences, right? You might have a certain belief, you might have a political thought, you might have just read a WhatsApp messages and you have a perspective about it, and you suddenly see a same person in front of you and you start to kind of make assumptions about the person. You start judging that person. You start evaluating that person based on your understanding, your 90% knowledge and 10% of what you visually see. All right. One more question. Okay. Who do you think out of these four are highly opinionated? Give me an answer in the chat box, guys. Who do you think is highly opinionated? Two. Okay. One again, two. Yeah. One, two. One and two seem to be popular. Why do you think one and two? Give me some reasons on the chat box itself. Why do you think it's one and two? Why do you think they are opinionated? Two and four. Two and four. Okay. Both of them are opinionated. Okay. All right. So sometimes we guess based on, this person is smiling. Most of them tell us that, the popular one is two here. Usually the most aged person are opinionated. This is also going back to office environment. Someone who's tenured, who is at the top of a hierarchy, we feel that they are like, who has a lot of experience in age, so they might have opinions. Everybody has opinions, right, Ram Lakshmi? All of us human beings have opinions. But sometimes we kind of make that judgment. We make that assumption saying that if they are old, they have some opinions, like opinions that cannot be changed. In the workplace, in the colleagues that you meet, you often come across these kind of people. Some people tell me that, okay, somebody doesn't look like every other person in office. They've colored their hair, they have tattoos all over their bodies, then you make assumptions about that person. Maybe this person has a different opinion, he's always opinionated, they're very strong and things like that. So we make all of these judgments in our unconscious brain. Okay, this is not happening in the conscious brain. Only when you bring it to your conscious brain, then it becomes dangerous. That means you believe in that. You make assumptions, you believe in that, and you make it a pattern to believe that one for your entire life, right? So one other thing that also influences our bias behavior is a phenomenon called the in-group, out-group. Okay, we love people who are exactly like us. The moment you see a stranger, you ask them, okay, what's your sunshine? What color do you love? Do you like non-veg? Do you like veg? Which place that you come from? The moment they say, oh, I come from Hyderabad, then you, if you are from Hyderabad, you already have an affinity bias. You already like that person. Even if that person says something absurd, you're just going to like it. And how does it impact the workplace work atmosphere? Hiring. When you're hiring, in the resume, you see a person is from Trichy and you're from Trichy, you grew up in Trichy, and then you see in Trichy in the resume, then you automatically have that bias of hiring that person. You would give them more pointers, right? That's called in group. That's belonging to my group. Someone that you don't understand, someone is coming from Czechoslovakia, or someone is from some other country, or they don't look like you, they don't talk like you, they don't speak Tamil, they don't speak Hindi, or whatever is your comfortable spaces, they don't do that. You like red, they like black, then you put them in the out group. Okay, and you treat them completely different than how you treat your in group. If you are a person who has a lot of tattoos, when you look at another person who has a tattoo, you're very curious, you love it and all of it. But if you're a person who doesn't like tattoo, or you don't have a tattoo, when you see a person with a tattoo, you immediately kind of like, oh, okay, this person is not my kind of a person. So this constant thinking in your brain is based on all the collective experiences that you've gathered in your 20, 30 years of life, right? And this is going to stay with you forever. The reason I want to tell you about these two things, the phenomenon behind what is this unconscious bias, where is it coming from, and all of it, is before we need to break the bias, we need to understand where is it coming from. All right. So the in-group, out-group phenomena, if you look at the presentation, right, if they are in your in-group, it could be your family, could be an in-group. Your siblings could be an in-group, or your best friend could be in your in-group. The colleagues, your favorite ones, could be in the in-group. You accept their differences. You remember all the positive things about them. You feel very safe with them. These are very good things, right? But when you're in the out-group, you kind of trust them a little bit less. And even in an appraisal or an interview, you kind of don't give them a very constructive feedback. You tend to give them a very subjective feedback. This happens in the gender dynamics as well. If you're a man and you're doing an appraisal for a woman, you both are going to be different. You are in an out group. By gender, you're outgroup people. But the moment you put the bias in front of your face and you start kind of analyzing, you put them in an outgroup, and you have a very close mindset towards that particular person, you're going to be not offering any kind of a support to another gender. And in a workplace, it's very, very important that we kind of understand the difference in gender, language, background, religion, economic status. Everything plays a card. We live in a very evolved world. Gone are the days where we can hire people only from Chennai and then you work only with them who can speak in Tamil. That's very comfortable for us, right? Because we relate to them in group. But now in a dynamic world, that's not going to happen. So that's why we need to evolve and the bias is more and we need to work on it. One more quest, guys. Who among these four is the CEO? Hema says 2, 4. Come on, guys. Who is the CEO among these four? Make a guess. 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay. A lot of 1 and 2. Yeah, 3, 4. Gokul says 4. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Okay, so to tell you the truth, right? So we look at what are the things that we look at. We've been seeing CEOs for years together. When they come up on the Apple CEO comes on the stage, we have a certain mind mapping on this is how CEOs look like, right? They wear a coat, they're looking above 40 years old and things like that. So this is called the mental model of success. Any profession, any designation, when we think, we have a mental model popping up in our head and we kind of calibrate in terms of who we see in front. When I show you 4 pictures of 4 people, you try to see, could this person be CEO? This person looks young. This person doesn't look, professional. And all of these conversation that you're having with yourself is making you choose what you're choosing, right? To tell you the truth, all 4 of them are CEOs. So that's the world that we are living in. We do not have anymore a factor that the CEO should be 40 plus years old. They could be 16-year-old CEOs, 20-year-old CEOs. The CEOs can be man, women, young, old, different ethnicity. So it's going to be a mix of it. I'll give you one more example. If I have to just ask you to just close your eyes from wherever you are and think about a nurse, you probably think about young women, most probably young or old, in a white costume. And that is your unconsciousness automatically popping in that picture into you the moment you think of nurse. If I have to tell you truck driver, okay, I'm sure all of us are thinking about a guy who's middle-aged, who's a man, and who has probably a big daddy and a mustache and looking tough and all of that, right? So that's called the mental model of success, or the mental model that we create ourselves into our mind. We'll look into more about why we think what we're thinking, but keep this with you and keep talking to me. Leave your questions from whatever you've understood so far. Leave your questions if you have any questions, and we'll discuss in the end of the session. So yeah, Devani says all 4 can be a CEO material, right? So that's how it is. Talent cannot be identified just by the face and the dress that they're wearing, on the language that they're talking. It has gone beyond that, and we have to evolve. And that is all about breaking the bias. Before we go any further, I want to play a short video for you. Have a look at that, and we'll come back and discuss. So this is typically a work environment. Sometimes we say it as a joke. Sometimes we assume, sometimes we don't mean to say it, sometimes we just say it, right? So being aware of what you're saying, who you're saying, and being kind of taking time to react to a situation rather than responding to a situation would kind of help you to get away with from these kind of basic biases. So we talked the video kind of clearly shows the different kind of biases, right? So figure out in your own office environment, what are the areas these kind of things happen. So take a pause before what you say to a person. They might not come back and tell you that as a complaint, saying that, okay, I felt biased in this particular situation, but people have that at the back of their mind. So it's very, very important. So why do we do so? It's not our fault, it's the fault of our brain. Our structure, it's called the limbic brain. The structure of the brain is the area where it helps you to interact. It involves it has where it comes from, where the motivation is evolved, your emotions, your learning, everything is stored. Now what has happened is we've all been the Stone Age people. In the Stone Age, the only fear that we had was, who will steal my food, or which animal is going to kill me? Okay, we all have evolved from that particular state. All our genes have been in the caveman days. So the fear of losing the food or fear of losing life were the two problems. And if you look at the cavemen, they dressed together and they kind of lived together in small clans and tribes to make themselves comfortable, right? So this helped them to kind of help them to kind of keep themselves safe in that environment, from the animals, from other people, from a different clan. If you look at the movies, you will see them, either they are dressed in leaves or like the furs in the picture, or they are like painted red all over them, or white all over them, or black all over them, just to have a familiarized environment. The brain works that way. It takes comfort in familiarity. Anything that is unfamiliar, it starts questioning, or it starts seeing that as a threat. That's why when we see people who are not like us, who are of a different gender, who are of a different ethnicity or a different language, we start trying to find shortcuts. Okay, now what are these shortcuts? So the shortcuts is the brain way of working. We have a shortcut for everything. You don't learn everything every single day. You learn to walk when you're a toddler, and this gets programmed into your unconscious brain, and it becomes a pattern, and it becomes habitual, and then it becomes, your mind is in autopilot mode. Now you can get up anytime and then you can just walk. Driving as one of the skills. So once you learn to drive, sometimes you don't even realize you're driving. You're on the call with someone, you're discussing, you're thinking about your home, you're thinking about a party evening and all of it, and suddenly you realize that you've driven 14 kilometers in the car. That's the unconscious brain that does it. So unconscious brain is very important because it helps you to make things easier, right? Anything that is programmable, that can be stored, that can be repeated again and again and again, it gets into your unconscious brain. Now, this part of this also kind of turns out to be one of the reasons that we are biased. If you had a childhood incident where a big looking man came and threatened you, or kind of jolted you in the middle of a park, it just gets into your brain, and unconsciously you process it and you create shortcut for that. The next time you see anybody who is big built with a dadi and things like that, you think, oh, that man is dangerous, right? So if you had an incident in your child where somebody you trusted was always smiling, always kind to you, always loving to you, kind of broke your trust in your childhood, today when you see someone who's smiling always to you, who is loving to you, you always question that because it's there in your unconscious brain. So it's very important that you pick up those part of those patterns which is unresourceful in your unconscious brain, and take it away from that and then rework on it. What goes as a belief system, which is transferred from one generation to another. Some of the beliefs are as old as 100, 200 years. But in today's world, it's time, if you want to break the bias in the workplace or any other situation, you need to take out all of those belief systems and start questioning why. Right now, we don't look alike. We have different hairstyles. We dress up differently. We speak different languages. We eat different kinds of food. 20 years back, I remember, if you sit for your lunch, you had, if you're in North India, you would have chapati and some vegetables on your plate. If you're a South Indian, you would have rice, rasam, sambar, and everything on your plate. Right now, we are in an environment, in a plate, you can have both. You can have multiple other things. You can have Chinese, you could have a mix of everything. That's what is happening in the workplace as well. There's a mixed culture, mixed race, mixed caste, mixed religion. Everything is coming inside. And it is natural for we as human beings to kind of get panicked. We are not used to situation. We are very used to familiarity. And now we have to tread on an unfamiliar zone. It is difficult. It is very, very difficult, but it takes only a conscious effort for you to go back and change your belief system. Some of the times, just keeping your mind open can help you do that trick. There's one more reason. One, we have that old brain, the limbic brain that we function with. Another thing is our brain also processes too many things. We are bombarded with information. Scientifically, it is said that the brain receives 11 million bits of information in just 1 minute. Right? It could be through pictures, colors, light, air, different kinds of information is bombarded into the brain. But the brain can process only 40 bits of information. So the brain chooses, what do I do? Which one should I pick up? Which one should I store for this human being? And it also makes shortcuts. Okay, this, you saw it before. She likes this kind of a person. So you kind of, in the in-group phenomena kind of a thing, you kind of pick up, okay, she talks like that, shows she likes talkative person. She walks like that, she likes that person. She dresses like formals, so she likes people who are wearing formals. So you kind of create these patterns and shortcuts which lead you to have an unconscious bias. Now, unconscious bias, I've been in the industry for 15 years trying to tackle bias. And me and Sunita have been extensively working on bias and teaching and mentoring and coaching people on how to let go of bias. But it doesn't happen like a magic. Even now, when we go into a bus or we are in a situation, we panic. The other day, I went to a station to take a train and I had to, use the restroom, and I wanted to give my bag to someone. And I looked around and I was just looking for someone like me. There was a mother with 2 children, and I felt comfortable giving my bag to another person. Would I give my bag to a guy who's wearing a lungi or having a cigarette, or a youngster, or an old man, or someone with a tattoo? I might not, because unconscious bias is a very strong belief that just stays in there forever, right? So our task for breaking the bias is to kind of pull out these unconscious beliefs that we have stored forever in our brain and start questioning that. Be self-aware of yourself. Keep an open mind. Ask a lot of questions. Don't make assumptions. Instead of making assumption, okay, this person is rude, or this person never talks to me, he never looks at me, or he never smiles at me, should be a rude person. Instead, you could just walk up to them and ask them like, oh, I've been trying to say hi to you. You've not even looked at me. You never even smile. Chances are that person did not even notice you in the hurry of walking. It could be as simple as that. So today I want to leave you with a couple of takeaways in terms of what can you do in the workplace to kind of make your workplace bias free, or you as an individual kind of practice in the workplace that will help you to break the bias. One of the most important thing is you listen to understand. This happens often with us, right? If somebody is coming and telling you a story, something is happening at home and all of it, you're already prepared on the answer. You're already judged them. You're already analyzed them. You already thought that you know the answer for it. And you already are bombarded with all that information because your brain has all of that folders in you. Instead of that, listen to understand. Listen intently, listen actively. Be there with them and listen to them, and don't try to assume things. If you have any question, ask them a couple of times more. This comes handy when you're managing a team or you're talking to your colleagues, right? Sometimes some people come back and tell you that, oh, I want to leave. And then immediately you're judging, oh, this guy, he takes a lot of leave. He doesn't come to office. He's not irregular. He's very irregular. He's indisciplined. All of that thought, keep aside that and listen to understand. That's one way that you can break your bias. Another one is question your assumptions about others. We have these stereotypical assumptions about people. If they're coming from Hyderabad, they are like this. If they're from Delhi, they are like this. They don't listen. They talk a lot. If they are from Mumbai, they are like that. So that's kind of a geographical bias. There's bias in terms of someone who's looking pretty, you listen to them more. Automatically, your brain feels very, an affinity towards that particular person. So you assume that person should be intelligent. You assume that person should be smart, and you go back to them again and again for some kind of help. Somebody looking a little different, you are reluctant to go to them. So think about what are the places you have stereotypes. If you have a stereotype of having towards women, say for example, somebody is coming back from maternity, and you're thinking, oh my god, they come back from maternity, maybe they are not wanting to do high profile projects, or they don't want to travel and things like that. Instead of assuming that, you could just ask them, like how in the video you go and ask Mr. Sharma if he's okay with shuttling between two locations. So these are things that you can do to avoid assumptions, because in the workplace, assumptions doesn't work at all. You have to ask a lot of questions, and especially when you're working as a team, it's important for you to understand your team members from their perspective. So go back and ask them a lot of questions. Even if it takes to understand them, ask them a lot of questions. This is one of the other things, seek to bring variety of perspectives. We are people, we need evidence, we need case studies to believe in something. In a workplace situation, sometimes as a manager or a thing, you have a privilege of making your own decisions. Sometimes you just make a decisions. You just assume my team members are not capable enough to make this big decisions. Take a pause. Maybe they have brilliant ideas than yours. Try to seek different perspectives. This happens in the meeting. Sometimes some people are very, very vocal about their opinions and thought process. And in a meeting of 15 people, only 2 people will talk, 2 people will make decisions, 2 people will decide, and all the rest will be quiet. So if you want to break the bias and bring in different perspectives to your workplace, make sure if you have 5 people in the room, make sure all 5 people are able to talk about their idea, you make a space for it. And that's how you break the bias. Now we do it in one way, right? If you want to, you can go alphabetical order in the meeting room, making sure everybody gets a chance, and everybody gets a chance in a fair way. Instead of saying, okay, you do, and you come last, right? So nobody is left out in a meeting. So seeking to bring a variety of perspective is one of the main reasons companies are driving diversity inclusion. Every company is trying to break the stereotypes and the bias in the industry. Because when you bring different perspective, variety of perspective, that's when the innovation happens. That's when your company kind of evolves to the next level, prepares itself for the next level. Right? One other thing that you can do is get to know outside your inner circle. Think of people that you go with lunch with. I know in the last 2 years of pandemic, we've never had lunch with our people. But then imagine when you were in office, there will be that regular people, like the 5 people that you go for lunch with, the 5 people you party with, the 5 best friends that you tell all your secrets to. Sometimes that's the in group that we always are in the inner circle. Try going out of your inner circle and then talk to people. Who are those 5 people you trust at office? Think of those 5 people. Maybe they look like you, they talk like you, they come from the same college that you studied in, or they speak Tamil like you do. And you don't want to talk to a guy who can't speak Tamil and he can speak only English or Hindi or Marathi or whatever language that he is good at. Right? So get to know those outside your inner circle, get to know people outside your vertical, your horizontal, from your expertise. HR people need to talk to only HR, not necessary. You can talk to rest of the departments. You will learn a lot of things. You will get different perspectives. And for you to break the bias is to know more people. The more you travel, the more you understand other people's perspective, you're less biased. So that is one of the trick to do that. Another thing that you can do is once you kind of understand and break the bias, you model that, you model that behavior for others in your team. Say, for example, you're in the cafeteria, and somebody is cracking jokes in Tamil all the time, and you're there, and there is one new joinee in your team who is just now come from Mumbai, and she doesn't understand the joke, and she feels left out, right? So what you can do is you can stop the team from either there's one way is you explain the joke, make sure she is participating in that fun element. Second thing is you can encourage the team members to say that, okay, why don't we talk in neutral language? And English becomes a neutral language globally, right? So these are small elements that will help you to break the bias in the workplace. I want to play you one more video to talk about this element of how sometimes the first video that you saw was more vocal. People talk about it. People said it like, okay, I'm being biased. Sometimes you don't even notice. People won't come and tell you that they felt biased, or they felt awkward in the situation, or they felt left out in a situation. So it's important that you consider everyone when you are working on your bias, right?
You know that little voice in your head? The one that tells you to ignore a tasteless joke.
The one that tells you to keep quiet when a client makes a racist comment.
The little voice that tells you you're not smart enough because English isn't your first language.
Or that it's okay to judge someone for leaving early because they have family commitments.
The one that tells you not to say anything when others are being reduced to stereotypes.
Or that it's not a big deal when everyone's opinion isn't considered.
You may think you're the only one that hears that voice, but that voice also speaks to other people. It says,
You're different.
You're an outsider.
You lack commitment.
Your opinion doesn't matter.
instead of listening to that little voice, you need to find yours and make it heard. It's time for all of us to speak up. Because when we change the dialogue, we can change our world.
All right, so the bias could be silent, it could be verbal, it could be just the facial expression. So bias comes in different forms and patterns, and this can impact the productivity in the workplace. It can impact the way that you do your work. Now, we've been talking about how we can be self-aware and break the bias. But what if you were the receiver of bias? You're working under a manager who is very biased towards you, or you are in a community where you're looked down for being a woman, or how do you tackle that? How do you tackle a workplace? Somebody is not on mute.
Yeah, please go.
Yeah. All right. So how do you tackle that? Okay, so I'm going to leave with you that, because this is also happens with us, right? While we are being self-aware, we are trying to fix our unconscious bias. Sometimes we become the victim of bias. It's equally important that we understand how do we tackle a situation when we are in a situation when we feel the bias. So there is an important technique called CPR, okay, which is called content, pattern, and relationship. In a workplace, especially, apply the CPR, right? Find out if that particular thing happened for one time, just one time. Your manager said something, or your colleague said something, like in the video, somebody said like, oh, you're a Madrasi, take a benefit out of it, right? So that could be the content. So the content, listen to the content. Is it just one time coming from a person? Or is it a pattern from that particular person? They do this a series of times for you to recognize even if this is a bias or not, because we are all struggling with our unconscious bias. Sometimes people say unwarranted things by mistake. So don't penalize them for like, oh, you said that once. Okay. So give it a time to kind of figure out if it is just a content which came in one time, or is it a pattern. There's one other way to look at it is, how does it impact your relationship with work? Okay, does it impact your work? Does it impact the quality of work that you're doing? Maybe it could be someone that you're going to be seeing for them one time, and you don't have to kind of fight it out. You don't have to fight all the battles in the workplace. But if it is a content and it is a pattern that you're receiving from everyone, and you have a necessity to work with that particular person for a longer duration, and you think that bias displayed by that particular person is going to impact your work structure, it is going to impact your appraisal cycle, it is going to impact your mental health, because you're going to be day in and out working with that particular person, then you need to act upon it. Okay, you need to kind of speak up for yourself. But I would recommend, first of all, check the CPR, find out that. Don't jump to conclusion that this is bias, or he was biased. Not everybody wants to bias, everybody wants to be inclusive. Nobody comes into office thinking that, oh, today I'm going to be biased and I'm going to treat this person. But because it is unconscious, sometimes it just flows out of them in a very different state, right? So figure out, do your homework, figure out if it is really a bias. Know your goal. Now, the goal for tackling the bias is, what do you want to do? Fine. You did a CPR and you figured out somebody is being biased continuously with you and it is impacting your work environment. What do you want to do? Do you want to penalize that person? Do you want him or her to apologize to you? Or do you want them to change the behavior? Do you want them to listen to you more? Do you want them to be unbiased? What exactly your goal in tackling that situation, right? You need to be very clear. The reason I'm telling you this is, when you are in a biased situation, when you are a victim of a situation, see, there are a lot of other things that happen in the workplace harassment, sexual harassment. There is no two way about it, right? There is, like, if it happens, you have forums, you have POSH, or you have the HR team to take care of the workplace harassment and everything. But the bias is a very thin line which happens, and we might not have a forum where you go and immediately complain about it and you get a redressal. Most of the time in today's scenario, we have to tackle it ourselves, and we need to be better prepared for that. For that, you need to speak up. And for you to speak up, you need to be better prepared mentally. You need to kind of prepare what you're going to tell that person. Otherwise, it will be because we are frustrated. We have sometimes tears in our eyes. We are highly emotional. Sometimes when we want to go back and then tell them that you've been biased with me, if you're not prepared, if you don't know your goal, you will end up talking all around the place, and that might not change the biased nature of an individual. Here, your aim is to change the behavior of that particular person, and you have to do it very, very constructively. So knowing your goal is very, very important, right? Once you know your goal, state your take. Talk only about that particular problem. And don't say that, oh, you've been sexist with me, or don't say that you've been biased with me for the last 6 months. Don't state your take like that. Mention the exact thing. When that particular meeting was happening, what you said about women employees in the organization felt like a little sexist to me. Okay. What you said, what you behaved, always start with this statement, what you said. Okay. Don't make generalized statement, because otherwise you will never be able to change their perspective about it. Be very calm, composed, cool, and handle that particular situation, because you're still going to be working in that environment, and it is important that you build that relationship. At the same time, it's not necessary you have to take the bias, because it's impacting your work, it's impacting your emotional quotients. State your take. So what always helps me is like, be very, very specific on the incident and talk about it. The fourth is the most important point. Make it safe. Okay, when you're talking to them, don't talk from an emotional space. If you're at that moment, you're in the emotional space, you're angry, don't go and shout, or don't cry to them and all of it. Take a pause, maybe come back the next day and talk to them. But when you talk to them, you're rather than taking a blaming approach, if you can just tell them, because you understand this comes from an unconscious mind perspective, it comes from their unconscious mind as well, and you also have an unconscious mind, and you need to build that relationship. You can talk about it. I know, yeah, sometimes I don't know what I'm saying, and then I say that out loud. Okay, I'm sorry about it. But maybe you did not realize, but you said this. Maybe you did not realize how it was impacting me, and you said it in a very casual way. You said it in a funny way, but this is how I felt about it. Okay, always go with I. Don't speak for the entire continent. Don't speak for the entire company. You've been sexist to every woman in the company. Don't make those kind of judgments. It is not going to change the pattern. You're not going to change the behavior of that person. But when you are mindful of how you're talking to that person and how you address this issue in this order: first, check content, pattern, relationship, know your goal. What do you want out of it? You want to change the behavior of that person because it's impacting your work. State your take clearly, crisply, and quote with the exact incident, and don't go about talking about everything, and make it safe for them. Make it safe for them. Make them feel comfortable talking to you, because the moment you said that, the first thing that they would say is, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I was saying this. I'm sorry, but then next time I would avoid it. Okay, and that's how the breaking the bias can happen in the workplace structure, because there we are not fighting out or showing fingers at each other and blaming each other on their bias. And what we are talking about is, most of the time, 99% of the time is unconscious. Only 1% of the time it is conscious. People consciously hurt you, consciously pin you, consciously judge you, consciously penalize you. That's different, right? Most of the time bias is unconscious. And together, once you understand, so there are 2 pointers here you need to understand. First thing is understanding what unconscious bias is and where it is coming from: your mind, your belief system, your thought process, what you've accumulated all these years. And how do you become self-aware, aware of what you talk? How is your body language? How is your tone to a certain person? Sometimes when we're talking to the CEO, our tone is different. When we talk to the security in the front gate, our tone is different. That is bias. But we don't know that. It automatically comes because of our belief system. We are so habitual in even changing the tone, even changing the body language, even changing the words that we use to certain people and what we don't use it to other people, right? So being aware of yourself is the first step. The second one is once you are aware of your inner biases and you control your bias, you set up a role model for the rest of the folks in the organization by tackling bias, speaking out for yourself, speaking out for your fellow colleagues. With that, I want to finish it, but I want to open it for just 2 minutes to kind of take your questions on the discussion that we had today. All right, there are 120 people. I am completely surprised. I thought it's 3 minutes over, so people would have dropped out. 120 people here. That makes my day, guys. Thank you so much. Now, can we have questions? Where do you get kind of stuck? What is your challenge? What are the things that resonated with you? And what are the things that you have questions about? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask me questions. If you're not comfortable me listening to your voice, you can leave your questions on the chat box. Come on, guys. It'll be lovely to have a couple of questions. Jose, maybe you could start the question marathon. Yes.
Anthony here.
Yeah, Anthony.
One of the questions which I have is that, like, you were saying, make it easy when you talk or when you raise your concerns with the person and not be emotional. I have a question here is that, like, see, the problem is that we are emotionally hurt because of what they have said. And is there any particular format or, like, guideline in which, like, we could talk or we could take it back to them? One of the things which I felt is that the reason why we don't speak is that we do not know how to talk to the person or what to talk to the person. We are completely, like, lost there. Is there any, like, a help in, like, how to approach that scenario? Because you're emotionally hurt, you kind of you want to give back emotionally back to them. Right. So how do we, like, deal with that kind of scenario?
Yeah, this is a very, very important question. Thank you so much for asking that, Anthony, because it's a very tricky situation. Most of the time, the person who puts us on a bias situation could be a senior person, and it becomes very, very tricky. One of the things that has helped us in our way is, rather than reacting to a situation, responding to a situation. So it's always good to give it a pause, not immediately kind of trying to address it. You don't have to immediately address it. So hold your thought process. Yes, that has happened. That happened in the meeting. You don't have to do it immediately. Don't have to do it in front of 4 or 5 people, because people are going to be kind of retaliating on that one, and they're not going to understand that you've been deeply impacted with that particular situation. So don't react. Rather than make a note of it, come back, take a pause, collect your thought process. How do you want to say it? And go back and respond to a situation. Take them one-on-one, talk to them in a very friendly manner. And again, I said, if it is a one-off situation, it's okay sometimes, when you see that as a pattern, it is very, very important for you to go back and fix it. I'm going to kind of pass it on to Sunita also to add on to any of the pointers. This really helped us in terms of taking a pause and then going back and addressing it. Really helps. At an organizational level, some of the companies are coming out with forums, like you have POSH forums, you have workplace harassment forums. Some of the companies are coming out different ways of raising this issue. That also helps in a workplace environment. You can try that out for your team to start with. Even in the meeting rooms, if somebody is being biased in the meeting room, in the conversation, one of the person kind of raises a flag or something saying that, okay, this was a bias statement, this was a bias statement, and this was a bias statement. Something like that to remind you, right? Because this is a behavioral change and it's not going to change overnight, but it is important for you to go back and talk. But when you take a pause, it gives you the clarity in that thought process. Sunita, do you want to add on?
No, Subha, I think you've covered all my points. Thank you.
All right. So try that, Anthony. I mean, there is no one way about it. Again, it's very, very new area. We are all treading into that area, how to raise it, So, some of the companies, we are working close to 300 companies globally, and a couple of companies have that. They have bias forums where you could complain, and you could talk about it in forums, or you have various discussion forums done on a weekly basis to kind of curtail this kind of bias. But you need to speak up. You need to speak up, collecting your thought process once.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hopefully I answered your question. Yes, it is tricky. Yes, it is not easy. It's like you having an appraisal conversation. It's never easy, even if you've been in the industry for 25 years. So yeah, jot down the points. Don't threaten them. Don't make them feel any less or more. So that's why I added those words, make them feel safe. And at the same time, you're also giving that as a very constructive feedback. Most of the time people accept it. They don't retaliate. Most of the time people have, when you tone down your voice, you're not emotional, you're calm, and you pick up that specific instance and the sentence that they spoke. When you're very specific, chances are they would listen to you, and they would try to kind of not repeat that behavior again to another person. So you're breaking the bias then and there. So yeah, keep doing that. All right, anybody else questions? Thanks, Anthony, for asking that.
So I have a question, Shobha.
Yes.
This is Hamza. So,
Yeah,
so
Hamza.
since you said that one shouldn't have preconceived notion about people, and one should ask questions, but in an environment that we live, that people don't like to ask questions, they don't like people to ask questions, that is how culturally we are. So I don't think I don't know, I wouldn't call it practical in that sense, because
yeah,
the whole idea of asking question is to know what is going in the mind of the person. And the person is not ready to tell you, then what's the point of asking the question? It can work in a very Westernized society. I know, like, they're open for questions, and they like people asking questions, but not a society that we live in.
Right. Right. No, you have a very valid point. We are evolving. Companies are evolving. The culture is evolving. We have lived in a traditional Indian social construct for long, where people don't like asking questions. Our children don't like me asking questions to them. All right. But in a working environment, for you to understand, it is very, very important. Otherwise, you're going to make a lot of assumptions. It kind of worked us in the past, where we made assumptions. It's like, if this animal has a big teeth, and it's going to kill me, those assumptions. Or if the fruit is very colorful, possibly this could be poisonous. Those were some judgment calls that we took, and judgment calls are very, very important. Even now, we make a lot of judgments. We say we are not judgy, but then we make judgment calls based on our experiences before. But if it is only impacting us, it's absolutely fine. But in a work environment, what happens is your judgments might impact another person's career. It can impact their mental health. It can impact their work style. So then it becomes very, very important for you to put in that extra effort, go that extra mile to have that conversation. Right? Otherwise, it's easy. I am judging something. I'm making my own assumptions. I am being successful in my task, or I am failing in my task, is within me. I don't have to ask questions. The failure also belongs to me. But if it is another person, and if it is impacting, it's important. Maybe you could put it in such a way that I'm only trying to understand you more, especially in interviews, looking at the college they come from, or the industry that they come from. They're coming from Amazon, then you already know Amazon as a company. Okay, this person should be like this. Maybe they don't follow dress code, or they're coming from, they come from this institution. They're from IIT. They are very smart. We make judgments both positively and negatively. Taking a pause and asking them relevant question, which is much needed for the job. There's no personal connect here. You don't have to get personal asking them personal question, but to the job, to the skills, to the talent that is required for you to perform a task in the office workspace. I don't think there is anything wrong in asking multiple questions. Go back
So
and ask that question. Yeah.
So basically what you're trying to say is you have to ask more objective questions rather than subjective questions.
Yes, yes, yes.
I think I
Because the
also
other
want to
person
add.
also understand. Yeah. Go ahead, somebody else.
Yeah, I just,
Sunita.
Shubha, I just wanted to add my penny's worth. I think also to ask questions from a space of non-judgment and psychological safety, so that people are clear that you're just being curious to help them, not to be curious because, I don't know, you want to get some extra personal information. So honestly, I love when people are genuinely interested in me. My guard goes up when I feel like people have their agenda or they're judging me. But if people are just like, well, Sunita, how do you manage this or what's happening? Then I'm very, very happy to share. So I think to keep that in mind, can we make the other person feel safe when they share emotionally, psychologically?
Yeah. And some of these questions which are very personal, it can, it becomes very personal. Questions like, are you married? Are you on Tinder? Or why you're not having kids anymore? Those are the questions people are reluctant to answer in a workplace. But beyond that, if it is to do with the work, if it is to do with your working styles, I didn't understand your style of working. You asked for data, but now you're asking for this, and I'm little confused about your working style, and I would like to understand more about your working style. Can you tell me what works for you? When you focus your conversation objectively towards the work and also tell them why you're asking them that question, I think they would be open to answering all of your questions. Yeah. Thank you. Any other question, guys?
Hi, Subha, this is Lakshmi.
Yeah, Lakshmi.
More than a question, just a comment. Very informative and engaging to have the session today. Thanks for your time. I believe it was quite focused, and the very part on how handling bias, how we handle bias. I'm sure it helps so many in our group, and the specifics in how we can approach, like Hamza just stated, so many do not question, do not voice out. There's this, they either accept it or ignore it. I think questioning is that one step which can change, slowly change. So definitely agree with what you stated. And just to add one more point is, people take these so personally, how they can detach themselves, the comment from themselves in such situations, how they can have a detached approach. Maybe that would help them question better next time.
Yeah. I think an organization is a community within a community. So when you culturally change and more people are asking questions within the organization, more people are constructive, more people are, raising flag on bias, more people are catching stereotypes within the organization. What happens is there is a cultural shift automatically happens. And everybody feels comfortable coming into that workplace. And this is not going to happen overnight. This is a cultural change, and it's a behavioral change of an individual. And all of us understand that more than your job descriptions and your pay packages, how you're being treated within the workplace means a lot to us. A lot of people join a company and leave a company because of that, right? So when we say bring your whole self to work, people bring all of their self, their unconscious bias, their stereotypes, their beliefs, their opinions, everything is coming there. But then when it comes to the game plan, we have to kind of keep aside our individual game plan and figure out what works at Code Mantra and how do we kind of build that sense of belonging with each and every employee in the organization, not by hierarchy, not by the tenure in the organization, but every single person, so that a new joiner who comes and joins Code Mantra the next tomorrow feels like, okay, I feel such a belonging in this workplace. So it's a cultural shift. And once this pattern changes, everybody will be okay to talking, everybody will be okay to listening, and you have to continue having this conversation again and again. All right, guys, I think we are 17 minutes past our time. Thank you so much for staying back patiently in the session and listening to us. Hopefully you have a lot of takeaways from this. Start practicing one or two of this. What I would also urge you is take a pledge. You don't have to boil the entire ocean. If you feel there is one thing that you have a bias towards, just take one pledge today. And then try to practice it for the next 12 weeks. Try to practice. Let's just let go of one particular bias and then just one at a time. Don't try to be like, you cannot become an unbiased person tomorrow morning. That's not going to happen. It's going to be a journey for all of us. So be self-aware. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Over to you, Jose.
Hey, thank you so much, Shubha. That's an awesome session today. The usual way that you and Sunita normally you speak and the way you take up the session. This session also we made this very special to us. Thank you so much for this. And I know the topic is so hot, but then it's need of the hour today. We've shared a lot of information with us. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Vanita, Lakshmi. Thank you very much for your kind words.
And Shubha, Sunita, same here actually. We'll try to break it up and be open-minded to that. Actually.
Yeah. Guys, if you have 2 minutes, can you come on a video? We can do break the bias. Let's start the pledge from today. I would love to see you all on camera. Whoever can come. If Jose, if you can take a screenshot or a picture with code mantra is all taken a pledge to break the bias. This is a symbol for break the bias. Like you're just going to break the bias. Let's all take a pledge today. It need not be like all of the biases, but just one bias. Thank you, Ganesh, for being the first person to switch on the video. If we can have more people, that will be lovely. Don't worry, I am not biased. I'm kidding. I'm biased. I'm not going to judge you in the video. So if you can come, thank you so much. That's lovely. Jyoti Krishnan, Anthony, where are the rest of Ganeshan? Thank you so much. Can we have a screen full, please? Satya, thank you. Dhanam, more people. We want more people. Come on, guys. You can do it. Put on your lipstick. Today is Women's Day. Let's strike a pose. We'll give it another 30 seconds. I think people are getting ready. They're putting on their shirts or combing their hair. Give it 30 seconds. Vanita, thank you so much.
Happy Women's Day, guys.
Thank you, Vanita. Come on, who else? Gayatri is there. Okay. This feels like I'm in a school taking attendance one by one. I'm just counting the names. Come on, guys. Few more faces. All right, let's do the post. And if Jose, if you can take a couple of screenshots, and that'll be lovely. Today is a very, very important day for all of us to start our journey for breaking the bias. I'm sure you're already breaking a lot of biases in your work environment in the community. Let's continue to do that. Let's strike the pose.
Yeah.
Sunita, that looks like a karate pose. Break the bias, guys. Yes. Ganeshan, we can't see your hand. Yes, like that. Yes. Hold it while Josh. Josh, are we done?
Yes. I've taken.
Okay. Thank you so much for the wonderful opportunity, guys. Make a lovely evening. Make a lovely bias-free environment at Code Mantra. Thank you so much for the opportunity.